So, Marshmallow Laser Feast. This stream may not, based on my connection, work so well, but we're an organisation that are distributed mainly across the UK. I'm based in North Yorkshire. Our main studio is in London, in East London, in Hackney Wick, very close to the Here East complex, on the other side of the canal there. And some of our team are based in Stroud, and others are based in Turkey, Italy, and Norway. So first of all, I'd say that we've already been set up and prepared for what we were thinking would be a remote office. And COVID, like with everybody, we thought we were more prepared than a lot of people because of this remote process. But it's been fascinating realizing the kind of intense truth of it, that we've had to adapt as much as anyone else, especially in various sectors. But what I'm going to talk to you about is diversity and resilience within the work that you do. I have found myself and my team in a situation where we are operating within the cultural sector, the commercial sector, and quite a lot of bespoke projects along the way. There's a central drive in order to just get the ideas out of our heads and into the real world, by whichever means, really. And I think that the diversity of our approach has given us at least a little bit of resilience so far, in terms of being able to just operate as an organization. This hopefully there'll be snapshots of this video that plays out. Some of it involves CGI, some of it is light installations. I think we've been fortunate to be able to realize that we can connect different technologies and bring them into live contexts for installations, for performances, as well as for commercial activations as well. And generally, my background's film and TV, so I was familiar with lots of shoots. We've worked in the music industry a heck of a lot, working commercials a lot. And effectively, when it comes to bespoke projects, we work with specialists a lot. So whether that is a crystal specialist, a robotics specialist, an architect, or a mechatronics expert, it's really varied. And I think that that is part of the spice and interest that we're trying to cultivate as a small organization. We deal with live, we try and get as much multi-sensory aspects in as possible, and are absolutely enamored by the immersive storytelling space. And just having studied film, just the prospect of this fresh snow, you know, you learn about narrative conventions and you learn about various narrative models that are kind of well trodden in terms of genres and subgenres. But for me, the advent of things like the internet and the dialogue between maker and audience, when it comes to using things like immersive technology, becomes really quite fascinating from a storytelling perspective as well. Much like what Sol at the start of this conference presented, in that you can connect with people in very different ways, entertain them in very different ways as well. Now, the way that we funded our projects and the way that we operate, we straddle the cultural sector, commercial sector, and increasingly we are dabbling in education as well. And before I go into that, I want to acknowledge what has been a common theme throughout these presentations, which is the dorkiness of VR. And I just want to put it out there that I fully acknowledge that a friend of mine once described VR as the Segway for the face. And I think that it's interesting because at this point in time, we love it and hate it in equal measure. We love what it can do, but are frustrated with some of the kind of the legacy, probably 1980s sci-fi based connotations that comes with technology. And we're a very human-centric organization. And so when it comes to R&D, what we're trying to do is do things like ask questions such as, you know, how do we bring squidginess? How do we bring tactility to our experiences? How do we bridge the gap between the virtual and the real world? And so lots of our R&D in the last couple of years has been focused on motion capture, performance capture, and tracking, including hand tracking and deformable objects. You know, how could we work with a theatre production or a film production, and with a bike pump a character up in space and then seamlessly pass that over so that same character is a real life person that shakes your hand. And there's this really nice seam of exploration where we are where that's our day-to-day life at the moment. It's like, well, we've done a lot of wafting our hands in the air in VR, but what about the actual story you can tell through the fingertips? What and effectively games engines like Unity, Unreal Engine, and more bespoke software that we tend to use called VVVV and VL give us these opportunities that generally we couldn't have done in the past, just because of the physics simulations, the graphics capabilities, and parallel tracking technologies and hardware are only just getting to the stage where they can actually give us compelling results. So here's a quick, I hope you can see this, but this is a quick exploration and example. Oh, in fact, it's frozen on my side, so I'll try again. Do you see that? So this is effectively a mocap environment where we've got deformable objects in the form of a, maybe I'll scrub this along, the form of a palm tree and an inflatable rubber ring. And just looking at different physical interfaces, you know, that interaction with sticking your head in a rubber ring, for example, could teleport you to a whole different world. You know, you could be in outer space when your head's outside of the ring, and underwater when you're inside of the ring. And those objects, the way that they interact with one another, the sonic effects help with presence. And again, just in terms of tactility, it's just one of these things where gauging audience reactions when we put people in these scenarios, it's like, man alive, this is beyond the novelty, beyond the zeitgeist. There's something else here that we can do. It's playful, but more importantly, it's using common interaction, because we are engaging with physical interfaces and deformable objects all the time in our living lives outside of the virtual environment. And so this has got huge implications for us when it comes to storytelling, and R&D is massively critical in our process. And it leads to questions like, do we taste in our dreams? Does dolphins dream in sonar? How can we experience tree time? Well, these are all questions within the studio that just make me really proud, because effectively we're a curious bunch. There's 14 of us, and often we expand and contract depending on the projects that we take on. And generally, it's just creating a community where we can ask these daft questions and then allow ourselves to explore them and embrace curiosity and reach more sound levels of understanding, and effectively equip ourselves with better tools to accumulatively use over time. And so things that we've developed for a laser forest years ago are as relevant now as they were even when we first started touring that particular installation, in that there's the retained knowledge, the production knowledge, and the kind of turnkey aspect of pressures of bringing an installation into the world and making sure it works time and time again. But there's also this code base that we can draw from and build on in terms of surround sound and things like that, and working practices as well. And this kind of R&D leads to lots of different explorations. For example, this is a collaboration where we're visualizing heart flow. And again, the heart is a deformable object. And looking at that rather playful rubber ring, you start to realize where, give a surgeon a virtual heart to prod with well, it's better to have some tactile feedback with that. And so that's the Mavis Fraunhofer Institute that we've been working with for an installation that was live until today in York, which is part of the York Medial, which under the Human Nature Festival. When lockdown finishes, if anybody is in York, we'd please try and make it along. The organisers have been really tenacious in getting a cultural production out in these in what is probably the most difficult year for cultural practitioners. So 3 types of work. We deal in commercial, cultural and arts, and self-initiated. Now, in honesty, we'd be doing self-initiated IP all the time if we could manage. However, the commercial benefits us financially, but also through being effectively trained to solve problems very quickly, whereas working in education, which is another slower current that is equally as important to us, in that we've had an ND student working for 3 years now on deformable object tracking, and we gain in both ways, and it just sharpens up your skills in different ways. I'll give you a few examples. In the commercial sector, we do traditional film, animation for film and shoots, increasingly for web, although often for broadcast as well. We just made the animation sequences for a film called Fantastic Fungi. Lots of our focus is around visualizing the natural world. And with that, it's taken us all over the place. We've just scanned some of the Amazon, in the Colombian Amazon. So there's lots of photogrammetry, LiDAR, and capturing of environments. But again, there's shows in there as well, because once you do a live show, you can't, it's such a buzz. And I think that the adrenaline burst and the camaraderie around doing live shows is just something special for anyone who has experienced that world. And of course, right now it's devastating what's going on, and it's really feeling the burn at the moment. And there's lots of conversations around the live and how things can pivot and so on. Now I'm mindful of time, so I'll rattle through a few things, but we've managed to tour a few installations even this year. We've got an installation in the Next Museum in Amsterdam that's live at the moment, which was initially a collaboration with the Science Museum in Manchester. We've done light installations. This was a commission called In the Eyes of the Animal for originally the Abandoned Normal Devices Festival. But my point about our approach here is that diversity and having to diversify and allow a work to be a living ecosystem is important to us. And there's new opportunities there, because you can create a VR experience that's then syndicated and doesn't necessarily exist as VR at all in certain circumstances, such as full domes, or you can see a big cylindrical screen, hopefully down on the bottom level there. And so there's new opportunities to roll out your work, to iterate your work and improve it based on user engagement. And I think that that is another aspect of the immersive sector that gives it a unique quality. You know, you shoot a feature film, you lock the edit and you distribute it. It goes out on DVD, it streams, it goes to cinemas, that's it. But in the case of distributing an immersive digital experience, it has to move with the times because VR headsets are improving all the time. Graphics capability is improving all the time. User engagement and ability to interact with the work is improving as well. So it makes sense for these to be living projects. You've seen that already. Self-initiated IP. Well, we took a gamble in 2019 with a project that we took to the Saatchi Gallery in London called We Live in an Ocean of Air. It was a shared experience for 12 people in VR headsets. It was multi-sensory. People had a breath sensor that we were visualizing. People's hands were tracked, and people had a heart rate monitor, and effectively were able to engage in a very basic narrative in a very different way. It was multi-sensory. We brought scent tracks into the experience, and on the whole we were over the moon because it was effectively we were able to create a commercial model around it and sell tickets. We ended up having 28,000 people through over a 5-month period, which of course it isn't massive, but the point is it's been an incredible case study for us to build on and develop future projects such as this one, Sweet Dreams. Very different on the surface, but using the same technology, using all of the learnings that we've gleaned from deformable object tracking, but this time involving another sense, taste. So tracking food. In this scenario, you suck on a straw and the walls close in, and you suck on another straw and you drink the sun out of the universe. We're tracking people's feet, and so each footprint has an imprint on the virtual world, and there's just huge dramatic learnings that occur from telling stories through the soles of people's feet, and just observing user interaction and seeing how much of a massive responsibility it is to for user care, and the fact that everybody is different, and how do we accommodate you can have a VR veteran visit your experience as well as someone who's trying VR for the very first time, and so how do we manage that? And again, it's just it's educating us, and I think if our team are learning, we're able to bring that expertise and fuel that curiosity and fuel that fire to be able to just push things further. And so as the technology such as mocap and tracking progresses, we can move with the times and improve those user experiences. And for me, as you saw from the Epic presentation, there's some extraordinary production values that are taking the aesthetics of using games engines and converging them with film production techniques, and so and motion graphic techniques that exist. So this has huge implications for new tools for designers, for architects, for filmmakers. And I've never been as excited about a space as I have been. And I think it's just, as what's been exposed, it's such a growth area, and I think for all different trades, there's always an application in the immersive sector. This is just an example of from commission to live and virtual and touring to this living ecosystem, because of course productions can exist online and in app form. But people and talent is still the most central and most important factor when it comes to our practice and the immersive sector. And so it's great to see things like Immerse UK and other networks just improving the connections between people. It's great to be on talks and panels like this, just learning about how we can cooperate and improve an emerging scene, and it requires a really diverse effort at and new opportunities to include minority groups and people that don't necessarily get access to this, which is of course one of a big aspect to consider, as well as that's both on the making side of things and on the experiencing side of things. You know, not everybody can afford a ticket to go to the Saatchi Gallery in London. How do we reach minority audiences that we want to have a positive impact on outside of London, you know? And that leads to stuff like what I'm currently on with at the moment, which is one of the Audience of the Future's collaboration with the Royal Shakespeare Company and the Philharmonia Orchestra, Manchester International Festival and Epic Games, among many others, that come early next year, we're excited to share a performance that is embracing virtual production. Hopefully it'll incorporate some deformable object tracking, as well as looking at how we strategically democratize and create access for many people that don't necessarily have the Segway for the face and other expensive hardware to boot. Have a look on Instagram. That's where you can see most of our recent activity. And Jim, thank you. Over to you.